Good morning, Club Awesome.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you. Woo, I am so excited to be here. Normally, when I use the word excited, it means anxious and not sure what's going to happen. But today, I know that we're going to have an awesome workshop for you all. It's been a while since we've done one like this, and I am happy to see someone here with some experience and some support behind everything that we do here at Toastmasters and Club Awesome in particular. I know it's early, but it is such a great way to start your Fridays. And I just want to make sure that you all feel that here today. So please give it up for yourselves, give it up for everyone here, members, guests, and DTMs. Thank you so much for being here. At the end of the meeting today, we're going to try to do some introductions, go around, get to know our guests a little bit, and just tell us, kind of how you might have found Toastmasters and what brought you here today. And with that, I will go into my introduction for our Toastmaster of the day, David Carr. David Carr is the one that was the brains behind this workshop. I really want to give kudos to him for putting it together and helping us through this. And then he volunteered himself as Toastmaster of the day. So it was great. Thank you so much for everyone who signed up today, but especially David for leading this and potentially leading us into more of these workshops in the future. David Carr, come on.
Thank you, Tricia. It is my pleasure to welcome you here. Let me just ask, I know we have a bunch of people in the room and online who are experienced Toastmasters, and some of them are Toastmaster junkies. If there's something that they're invited to that has something to do with Toastmasters, they show up. But I did want to try and reach beyond that to people who might be getting their first taste. Is there anybody in the room here or anybody online who is new to Toastmasters or is just checking this out for the first time?
Yeah.
One, all right. Is it RJ?
RJ, yeah.
Somebody else? Is on? Okay, wonderful. Anybody online? I should have left it in gallery view so I could see. Arena, okay, well, wonderful. I'm hoping that you're going to get a lot out of this. The whole idea behind this program was to focus on the professional value of Toastmasters and of public speaking to building your career and establishing yourself, creating a presence for yourself in the room. One of the things that Marilyn and I talked about before that is that the world has changed a bit. We have more people working from home, working remotely. You may have meetings that are entirely online. You have meetings like this one that are split. Some people in the room, some people online, which is in many ways even harder to manage. And not just from a techie standpoint, but in a leadership standpoint, making sure that everybody is included and everybody is addressed and everybody has a good experience. I mean, at work, I don't know whether it's always a good experience, a productive experience, let's say that. And so I'm counting on Marilyn to impart that wisdom to us. Now, Marilyn and I worked side by side in this club for a number of years. And sometimes you take people who you have learned alongside, made mistakes alongside, you can take them for granted. But Marilyn is a big deal because she not only took the Toastmasters experience to the district contest, so she competed at the district level in public speaking or humorous speaking, right? With her speech, "Getting Old Ain't for Sissies," which is a wonderful speech. Actually, I think it was like an earlier version of that speech she gave at the contest another year where the timers were weeping because she ran over by a couple of seconds and they had to disqualify her. Yeah, 2 seconds. Okay, she remembers. She remembers. I don't think they're supposed to tell you, but they told you. Anyway, but she came to the club at the time that she was transitioning from a career at American Express in HR and customer experience. She had a successful career. The cliche about Toastmasters is everybody comes here because they're deathly afraid of public speaking. And they're shaking in their knees. And no, that's not Marilyn. Marilyn's not afraid of anything. Marilyn definitely wasn't afraid of me when I was president. She wasn't afraid of telling me that I was doing stuff wrong and needed to improve. But she realized that she needed to raise it up to another level if she was going to go in and tell people how to run their businesses, tell executives how they could improve. She needed to step it up a couple of notches. And one of the ways she did that was by leveraging her Toastmasters experience, making herself a better and more powerful public speaker. And from there, I'm counting on Marilyn to take us through this most of this meeting. We do have a couple of people who will be helping out serving different functions, such as Christine Campbell will be keeping time. The main presentation is supposed to be about 45 minutes, Christine. Then we'll take a break. If we have time, we'll do table topics, which for those of you who might not know is impromptu speaking practice. And that's a district table topics contender right there. So we hope to have a great meeting. Christine Campbell, can you explain how you'll fill the timer role for this meeting?
I sure will. I am so excited to be the timer. Timer is the most important when anybody gets up to speak. We are so excited to have Marilyn here. I will be timing her for 45 minutes. With that, we're going to have the green light at the 30 mark, and then we'll have the yellow light at the 40 mark, and then the red will be at 45. And with that, for the lights, I'm just gonna pop them up real quick. And then in table topics, we'll do the timing then for that. But we have, again, the green is gonna be at the 30 mark. At the 40 mark, I'm going to have the yellow, and the red will be at the 45. Back to you.
Marilyn, I'll have a computer screen up front pointed towards you. You have some clue where you are on time. We have one other functionary, which is our by the way, this is kind of a stripped down Toastmasters meeting. So if you are coming here for the first time without prior Toastmasters experience, I want you to come back and see what a regular meeting is like. A regular meeting is usually 3 people giving prepared speeches, some table topics, maybe a humorist to tell us a joke if we're lucky, and evaluations. Yes, evaluations are important. One of the things we say is that you get immediate feedback. That's one of the ways that this is probably a lot better than most college courses in public speaking you could get, because you're going to get immediate feedback. You get to make your mistakes among friends, but your friends are also going to tell you when you messed up and you could do better. All right. That's part of being a friend. So I was about to introduce our vote counter, Tricia Jervis, who you already met her. She'll explain it when we get there about how she's going to count votes for probably just table topics. And we're not even absolutely sure that we'll have time for table topics, but we'll see how it goes. With that, I have rambled on long enough. Marilyn Brown, everybody.
Good morning, Club Awesome. It is great to be back here at the Ice Den, a very cool place with a very cool club. I don't know, that setup was a little bit more than what I was expecting. So now oh my, this is so much fun. It's great to be back here at Club Awesome. Good morning to everybody who's online. It's great to see you here wherever you are in the world. I've been kind of watching how this has become a hybrid club. It's pretty exciting. Well, David called and he, talked to me about doing this assignment. Could you do something around public speaking? And we had this very nice long conversation. And I said, David, sure, I'll be happy to do this for you. I will get up for the first time in 5 years at 6:30 to come to your club. And then he sent me the title. The Essential Value of Public Speaking. And I freaked out. It was a pretty intimidating title. In fact, it was so intimidating that last Saturday, I woke up and it was one of those lazy days. I didn't have a lot on my schedule. So I decided to do that, I think I'll just doze for a few more minutes. Anybody ever do that? They just doze for a few more minutes and you go in that deep sleep and have those vivid dreams. Well, that's what happened. And those dreams come in like a frame. And the first frame is I am at this conference and I go to my room and there's other people in the room telling me it's not my room. I unpack my suitcase and I have all my business attire, except the only thing I have to wear on my feet are the worst, nastiest looking flip-flops you've ever seen. Now we're down in the cafe and in the restaurant because we're asking, as we do in a conference, when we get done with our presentations, can you deliver our food after we speak? Maitre d's like, of course I can do that. So I go up to get my order and he goes, oh, there's only one problem. I said, what's that? He said, we only have 4 special meals to be delivered and you're number 5. So now I'm in the wrong room. I had no shoes. I'm not getting fed. And I go back to my room. I open up my laptop and I have these great slides. And I don't remember what I'm going to say about any single one of them. And my note pages are not attached. So now my heart is racing, the anxiety is going because I have to go tell my friend David Carr that I cannot do this presentation for him because I am not prepared. I don't have my notes. I don't remember what I was going to say. And at that point, I did what any normal person would do. I woke up and got out of bed because this was just too scary. But immediately after that, I went and I sat down and I wrote my presentation for today. I started it together. Because you see, I am one of those people that have to put the presentation together. I have to practice. I have to think about it because I want to make sure that whatever I'm going to deliver for you today is going to add value to your life, that it's going to give you something that sticks, that there's something that I say to you. Bruce said when he came in, he goes, I'm getting old ain't for sissies. I use that term at least twice a week. I want something that sticks with you, that adds value, and that I'm clear in my communication. I am not that person who can pull a speech together like your esteemed district director, Lois Margolin, who I have actually sat next to, who could put together a speech in 5 minutes between the time the meeting starts and when you get to the time to give the speech. Lois can put a fabulous speech together. That's not me. So I took the time. I wanted to make sure that whatever I did was going to add value. And when I thought about this topic, the essential value of public speaking, I thought, well, they really don't want to hear my journey through Toastmasters. That's not going to be really that interesting. But when you think about public speaking, it's really the essential value of being able to communicate effectively. And when we communicate, there's 2 components, right? It's the speaking part and there's the listening part. Today, we're only going to focus on the speaking part. And with that, I just want to get a sense, a sense of who I have in the room. So how many of you are leaders that have an official title of leaders where you're working with other people, you are managing their performance, you are giving them and assigning their day-to-day tasks, that you're responsible for their performance? How many of you in the room and online are leaders, title leaders? If you are a mother or a father, you are a leader, you are the line leader in life, you are the first leader your kids are ever going to be with, okay? So just remember that when they say, are you a leader? Yes. How many of you are in a role that you are influencing other people, that you may not have direct authority over them, but you need to work with other people to get things done? Anybody online? Who are all these people that are camera shy? Come on, get those cameras on. Get out of your daytime pajamas, get the cameras on, come on, get in the room. And so anyway, we influence, right? How many of you have to present yourself in either a sales role, a marketing role, a leadership role? You're presenting to leaders in your organization, you're trying to sell your product, you're trying to sell yourself in a job interview. Anybody? Okay, so I'm in the right room with the right people, so that's a good thing. So when I think about this, right, one of my favorite quotes that we use am I using the right one, or which one do I use? Is it the time?
All right.
So one of my favorite quotes
This is the technical genius
that we hear is from George Bernard Shaw. And he was quoted as saying, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. The illusion that communication has taken place. So when you
I'm
think
just gonna
about
have to
that, do
advance them for you.
you want mine?
Well,
When you think about that,
it's,
how many times have you been talking to someone and you're crystal clear in your head about what you're trying to communicate to them? And they have this look on their face and they're going, what is it that they're trying to tell me? Or how many times have you been the receiver of that information and you're wondering, what are they trying to tell me, right? You're like, I don't get it. Which one is it? The one on the right?
you just clicked on, yeah.
Okay,
There.
so we know that communication is confusing, right? And as I started to think about it in today's world, if you read all of the different newsletters out there and leadership topics, they scream about it's all about relationships, it's all about influence. Well, I have something to tell you. I'm old. I know I don't look it, but I am old. And even when I was 17, the two biggest things that were important in life and in work were building relationships and the ability to influence others. And the only way you can build relationships is through communication, through speaking to people. The only way you can influence people is through communication and speaking to people. So these both are critical competencies. And what I was thinking about is I thought, well, if you can't communicate effectively, you can't build a relationship. And if you can't build relationships, you can't influence. And if you can't influence, you can't lead. I might write a book on this. If you can't communicate, you cannot lead. So then I thought about, well, what are the core competencies we need to communicate? What does it require to be an effective communicator and to lead successfully? And in our People Tech Leadership Journey, which is a program that I run for the company that I work with, we have a program and it's all about self-awareness and improving in all different areas. And when we look at communicating and we look at leadership competencies, the ability to communicate with clarity, show enthusiasm, which Club Awesome has plenty of, showing confidence, maintaining composure, and the ability to rally people around goals is critical in your leadership. And you may ask me, well, how did I get to that? Well, in the leadership journey, I have done over 30 leadership journeys in the last 10 years. I have put over 330 people through the leadership journey. And in that leadership journey, they get one-on-one feedback. Did anybody ever get 360-degree feedback in your career? Anybody online?
Yes.
Right? You're getting feedback from your leader, from yourself, from your peers, from your direct reports, and anybody else you want to invite to the party. And we look at that and we say, okay, how are we scoring? So out of 330 people that I have done one-on-one feedback with, only 27% had communicating with clarity as a strength. Think about that. 73% don't have communicating with clarity as a strength. So the minute you can communicate more effectively, that gives you a step up. It puts you ahead of the crowd and it sets you apart because you are going to stand out if you can communicate in a way that people understand. So what does that look like? So communicating with clarity, I like to use stories as I go through to make a point. I'll always remember, and this was my classic case, I had a young person working for me at one point. Good looking kid, smart as anything. He was fast tracking his career. He was really moving up very, very quickly, very impressively. So he gets promoted to New York, to our New York office, and he has the chance to present an idea to our senior leader, 2 levels up, for the first time. I'm in the room with all of the other directors, and he gets up and he starts this presentation. And he starts talking about the corporate enterprise. And I'm thinking, Star Trek? When did we move to Star Trek? And then he talked about the strategic footprint. I'm looking all over for the footprints. Then it's the ethos of customer service. I still don't understand the word ethos. So I had no clue what he was talking about. And sorry for him, nobody else did either. So by his third slide, everybody had zoned out. The leader was flipping pages. She had totally gone on to the next thing. And when he finished the presentation, she looked up and instead of saying, having any questions or giving him any feedback, she said, okay, who's next? What an embarrassing way to make your presence known in the first presentation you're giving to your senior leader. So the next day he calls me and he goes, Mom, because I was his work mom, he was young enough to be my son. He goes, Mom, what happened? I said, I'll tell you what happened. I said, you got up there and you used all of these great big New York City kind of corporate words that people think make them sound smart. And in trying to sound smart, you sounded stupid. I said, it sounded like gobbledygook and everybody zoned out by
Yes.
your third slide. He said, well, what do I do? I said, be like Ken. He goes, be like Ken. You mean Ken Chenault, who was the CEO at the time? I said, yeah, be like Ken Chenault. I said, when you go to a meeting with Ken, do you understand exactly what he's saying? He said, well, yeah. I said, and you know why that is? I said, because Ken talks in third grade language. See, spot, run. Go, dog, go. He keeps it simple. He doesn't try to use big, impressive words. I said, Ken paints the picture. He takes what he's thinking and he puts it in a way that you can understand that when it goes from his brain to your brain, you have the same picture. If he talks about customer service, he's explaining what that looks like to him. I said, he keeps it simple. I said, Ken doesn't need to use big words and to be impressive to have people think he's smart. I said, because Ken's results speak for how smart he is. I said, so be like Ken, get rid of that corporate jargon that you're reading in the newspapers and that you're hearing on the street, because all it's doing is getting in the way of your message. Well, I would say that he must have listened and taken that feedback because he is now a vice president at another huge bank and a very important role. So we think about communicating with clarity. You can either be sending a message that gets all garbled up like that ball of twine, or you can communicate in a way that that message goes exactly the way you want into the other person's head. And so it's the clear language, concise, the right amount of detail, make your point, and set up the goal of the message. So if you're going in to present to somebody, tell them what it is you're doing. If you come in and you're going to share what's going on at the, in the organization through the rumor mill, I'm sitting back and putting my feet up on the desk and enjoying the conversation. If you're coming in because there's a decision that you need made or you need my point of view, I'm listening differently. And if you're coming in to tell me all hell is breaking loose because something's escalated and it's coming down on my desk in 5 seconds, I'm putting on a whole different set of ears. So when we think about communicating with clarity, those are some of the behaviors that are needed to do that. It's frozen again.
Okay.
Then we
sorry.
go to the next competency, which is showing enthusiasm. Look at this. Look at this. Go back to the previous slide. Only 7% of leaders had showing enthusiasm as a strength. 24% had it as an area for development. And who knows what's going on with the rest of them. Go to the next slide. When we think about enthusiasm, keep going. We're thinking about energy. As a leader, are you bringing energy into your conversations and in your discussions? Are you so excited about what you're doing, what you're selling, the house that you're showing, that it's coming over and coming across to your audience? And when I talk about this competency with people, they're like, MB, I'm just like that. I'm just not that kind of person. And because in their head, they're thinking enthusiasm and energy is pom-poms and rah, 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 and getting up on the desk. It's not. It's about bringing energy in your voice. And when I think about that, when, look at what David did. So he calls me up. He asks me if I can present. Sure. Then I start seeing things on Facebook. Then it's on LinkedIn. Then I see it in Coral Springs Talk. Then he calls and says, can I do an interview? He puts that out there. Now he puts my getting old ain't for sissy speech out there. And I'm thinking, man, he is like PRing the heck out of this thing. Right? And I'm going, right, exactly, no pressure, man. I really have to bring my A game at 7 o'clock in the morning. What if I had come in here after all of that hype and I stood up in front of you and I said, good morning. My name is Marilyn Brown. I'm going to do a speech today, a presentation on the importance, the essential value of public speaking. I think you're really gonna like it. You're gonna get a lot out of it. As we go through the 38-page slideshow that I have. I was told you would be running out the door, you'd be flipping off the Zoom, you'd be throwing David on the ice and saying, when your brain falls down, let's go back up. So I can't do that. And I always think back to one of our fellow Toastmasters, and Mark and Bruce are gonna remember this. He gave the most fabulous leadership speeches. He would come in all dressed in a suit. He always had his flip charts and his, markers. Everything was always well done. And I loved listening to what he said, but there just wasn't any pizzazz to his delivery. And I think we gave him that feedback that he needed more energy. And he said, it's very funny. He said, this morning, my 4-year-old looked at me and he said, Daddy, are you happy? And I said, yes, I'm happy. And his 4-year-old said, well, Daddy, if you're happy, you should tell your face about it. Wow, right? So be like the 4-year-old. If you're happy, tell your face about it so that you can tell the people that you are with that you're excited about it. And I use this in my coaching all the time because for introverts, especially, sometimes this generating the enthusiasm is so unnatural for them. They really have to push themselves to do it. And I'll ask them in the coaching session, I'll say, so listen, if you're excited about something, how do I know that? And the answer is, I don't know, maybe you can tell it in my voice. And I'm like, well, if that's the way you're being excited, I said, I'm not feeling it, baby. So we need to bring enthusiasm and energy because that's what makes work fun. David, next page. I don't know if okay. The next ones are showing confidence, maintaining composure, and rallying people. Again, these are things that set you apart. Because when you think about being able to influence other people, you really have to be able to bring your A game all the time. Now, in 2021 to 2023, we had the Great Resignation. Why did people leave companies? Any thoughts on why people left companies?
They wanted more flexibility.
More flexibility.
Respect.
They didn't feel respected.
No room to grow.
No room to grow.
Children at home.
Not satisfying kids at home.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. So flexibility actually was low on the list. Not feeling respected was the top reason. And what happened is when everybody went to the Zoom room, they were so busy, right? Remember, you heard in the very beginning of COVID that productivity was up. Productivity was only up because people had nowhere to go. So instead of going for a walk, they'd say, I'm just going to check my email. And then they would be stuck at their desk from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. We lost all respect for people's boundaries, their time, etc. And what also happened during that time is leaders were so busy doing meetings that they forgot to do the one-on-one meetings with their people. And so what happened is people didn't understand the strategic direction. People didn't understand how they fit into the big picture. They felt totally discounted and isolated. So this was not just a leadership issue, this was a communication issue. And that's why these things are so important. And when I think about confidence, it's really important that we have, confidence in what we're saying, because if you go into the room and you're with people, I'll look at Bruce. If Bruce goes in, I'll never forget Bruce's speech. He gave us a speech on showing a house to somebody. It was hysterical. He had his camera underneath the baseboards. The lady was up in Rhode Island or something. He's got the camera under the baseboards, showing people, the floors and everything. It was so much fun, that speech, but he had tons of confidence in terms of this was a great buy for this person. And if you don't come to the table with confidence, first thing is they're going to question your knowledge. And then when you do speak up, they're going to question your credibility. And when I think about confidence in Toastmasters, I always remember, and Mark and Bruce will probably remember this too, George. Now, George came into the room, and Stephen, you're going to associate with this. So George came into the room, and the first day he comes in, he goes, Miss Brown, don't call on me for that table topics, okay? You got it, George. Next week he comes in, he goes, don't call on me for that table topics. No problem, George. Third week he comes in, Miss Brown, don't call on me for table topics. I was the topic master. I called on George. I gave him a very simple topic. He walked up to the front of the room like this. He figured that if he walked slow enough, we would tell him his 3 minutes was up. But he got up here, we had to literally drag him through the 60 seconds to make it to the borderline, right? And when he got done with his 1 minute, he stood here and he went, yes, I did it. I'm a Toastmaster. And that day, we couldn't shut him up. Okay, so confidence is something you really get when you're in the room. And then composure. We are being thrown so many different things these days, so many different messages, so many differences of opinion. And as a leader, you have to be able to maintain your composure, regardless of what the situation is. And that's not just emotionally, but nonverbals, you have to be able to maintain. And if you can't do these things, you will never rally people around the goals. And what does that mean? You are trying to drive results directly or indirectly. If you can't get people excited, if you can't paint that clear vision of where we're going, if you can't explain how they fit into that vision and why it's important, you will never be able to rally people. And there's 2 types of leaders, in my opinion. There's the command and control leader, and then there's the one who's the influencer. So what does command and control leadership look like? Anybody want to guess?
My way or the highway.
My way or the highway. Fear. Right, they're the ones that run around as the taskmaster. Do this by then. Is it done yet? Did you finish it yet? Let me see how it's coming along. They micromanage. They're miserable to work with. And if you have a choice in terms of what type of leader, most people would tell you they would rather wrestle alligators than work with that person. You don't want to be the person that they want to wrestle alligators with. So we have to be able to influence. You have to have confidence, composure, and the ability to manage other people. How am I doing on time? Good. Okay, now, next one. Excuse me. Now we get to the virtual presence, because when we're communicating, it's not just what we say, it's how we're showing up. And since we went to Zoom, and everybody's in Zoom meetings all day long, it's pretty exhausting. And what I realized as I'm coaching people over the last 3 years is because we're in Zoom all day and we're problem solving, or we're selling a house, or we are giving direction, whatever it is, what's happening is I'm seeing that relationships are going downhill. People are forgetting how to communicate, and our younger people really are having a problem with this, because all they want to do is text, send an emoji, or Teams meeting, or they're sending email because they don't want to talk to people. And I asked them, I'm like, well, why don't you just pick up the phone? Back in the old days, we used to pick up the phone to talk to people. And if they could talk, they talk. If they couldn't, they tell you that they'll call you back. Today, kids don't want to, I might interrupt them. Well, guess what? Maybe that's what they're there for, to interrupt. And they're not taking this time to make the small talk to build the relationships, meaning what I call virtual coffee. Getting on the phone and just saying, hey, how you doing today? What's going on? The conversation that used to take place in the workplace, when we were in the building, over the wall conversation. Oh, I heard you're having a problem with that. Let me tell you what I know. Do you want to go for lunch today? I'd like to hear what's going on in your department. All of that stuff is disappearing. So if you can do that kind of communication, you are going to be heads and tails above everybody else, because you're going to expand your network and you're going to know who to go to get things done. So with this whole Zoom thing and this relationship part, it's also how you show up. And a few weeks ago, I was talking to a young leader, and he was in one of my leadership journeys, and we were doing his one-on-one feedback. And he said, I got some feedback here. He goes, it says that I lack executive presence. I said, well, why do you think they think you lack professional executive presence? He goes, I don't know. I think it has something to do with the day that the cat jumped on my lap and walked across the keyboard. And I said, okay, that could be it. I said, but I'm like, I've had cats walk across the keyboard. I'd have babies walk across the keyboard. I have dogs interrupt the meeting. I have had husbands not knowing their wife is on social media already in a meeting, walking through the kitchen in a state of half undressed, going, oh, that's not cool. Okay. No, it was really not cool. And so So I started to watch him and I'm observing him and on the screen, he is facing this way. His camera is this way. So whenever he wants to talk, he's turning his head. He has a hat on. He's got no backlight. And so I got off that call and I sent him a note. I said, so here's the thing. I said, you're looking sideways at your computer. You're not looking at your camera. You have no lighting. You have a hat on. You look like you're in the witness protection program. I said, so maybe you should come out of the program and be part of the meeting. And then next week he shows up, hats off, hair's cut, camera straight, light behind him. He looks fabulous. And you know this because David had done at least 1 million workshops on this from the time COVID started, because I was following it for a while of doing executive presence. How do you present on Zoom? How do you do this in a hybrid? So you know some of these things, but this kid, I mean, it changed his entire demeanor. He had more confidence. His shoulders were back. He was more engaged. He had facial expression. And I was like, man, just turning the light on made such a huge difference for him. And a few weeks later, he was promoted. I don't think it all had to do with how he was showing up on Zoom, but now he knew how he needed to show up on Zoom. Which brings me to my next topic, which the people that are not on camera are not going to like. But if you're going to be in a meeting, be in the meeting. Be in the meeting. If I invited you to this room and you stood outside the door, I would say, well, that's great. They came to the meeting and they're standing outside eavesdropping, because that's what it feels like for me. So the first expectation I have with people is when you come to one of my meetings, you get the camera on. You get out of bed in the morning, you fix your hair, you get your makeup on, you comb your hair, you get out of your daytime pajamas and be present. Because you can hide behind the camera all the time. And when you're behind the camera and you're not visible, well, if I can't see you, we're not building a relationship. I don't know how you're reacting. I don't know if you're getting it or not. And so that's one of the biggest things you can do is always be camera ready. It's really important to do that. And then making sure that you're participating so that you, that people know that you're there, that you're present, that you're involved. And then the next slide is, listen, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not used to doing this at 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay. But the other thing that we learn, right, is it's not just what we say, it's we have to be able to read people. We have to be able to hear, look at their facial expressions. Are they getting it? Are they engaged? Am I keeping them interested? And it brought me back to a story from 1987. I was with a brand new leader and I'm in the room with my team and they're trying to tell me something, but they're really hesitant. They really don't want to say what they have to say. And I finally like, would somebody just tell me, what is it? What do you want to tell me? And Tina finally had the courage to say it. And she said, MB, it's like this. She said, when you speak, we like what we hear, but you really should put a brown paper bag over your head when you do it. Talk about like some candid feedback. You should put a brown paper bag over your head. And I said, well, why is that? She said, because what you say and what your face says are two different things. I'm like, what do you mean? Give me an example. She said, well, you might say, oh, that's a great idea. Your face says, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So 2 years later, I'm getting feedback and we're doing this role play because I think I have fixed this issue, right? And they videotape me and sure enough, I'm like, oh, sure, we can do that. And my face is going, freaking nuts, we can't do that. So facial expression, people would always say to me, you don't have to ask MB what she's thinking because it'll be on her face when she walks out of the door. She's either on board or she's not. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress for 40 years. My grandkids will run. They're like, she got that grandma face on. We better go. So facial expression, what are you saying that people are reading into? Your tone. After 8 hours of being online, it's pretty possible that by 4 o'clock, you're exhausted and you're just now reading the script or leading the meeting and there's no energy. You're wiped out. and nobody's listening because you're wiped out, they're wiped out. So you have to always be watching your tone up, down, in, out, however it is. And then the body language, are they falling asleep again? Are they interested? Are they questioning? And it was very interesting because I'm coaching a coach and I'm getting her prepared to do this work that we do. And she said, you know, I'm having a really hard time. She said, if I'm in a room, I can read the body language. She said, I'm having a really hard time reading the body language when it's online. I can't tell how they're reacting and how they're feeling. And of course, I looked at her and I said, well, you have a Toastmasters up in St. Cloud. I think it's time for you to join, which brings me to our last slide, which is, well, how do I fix all these competencies? If I'm not sure if I have them or I don't have them, how do I fix them? And what I tell people, and I'm constantly coaching, and when we get to lack of communication, lack of enthusiasm, they're not confident, they're not able to maintain composure, I'm like, you need to go to Toastmasters. I don't care if you go for 6 weeks, 6 months, or for the rest of your life, but you need to go to Toastmasters for a period of time. And here's why. Because it is the cheapest, most inexpensive, fastest way to improve yourself. Fastest way to improve yourself. And so when I think about communicating with clarity, in your Pathways program, you have assignments. They are 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10 to 12 minutes, maybe sometimes in the advanced manuals, they're 30 minutes. But you've got to learn how to put together a presentation in a short period of time and get it across to everybody in the room. You learn how to become more concise in your communication. When I think about showing enthusiasm, if you don't get up here and entertain your audience, they're not going to want to hear you. They will go to the bathroom during your speeches, believe me. So you're learning to bring enthusiasm, and your evaluator is watching to see how enthusiastic are you? What enthusiasm are you bringing? Confidence. I talked about George. It gives you immediate confidence because when you have to get up constantly and speak on the fly in 1 to 3 minutes on a topic that you may not know. I was telling David, I said, the first time he says, you know, you came in, you were confident. I'm like, I was scared to death when I came into Toastmasters. All you guys were already Toastmasters. You knew what, you knew what you were going to be judging me on. I had no clue what they were going to judge me on. And the first table topics he gave me was outside of my realm of, like, I thought I had to be an expert in the topic. And it was outside of my realm of knowledge or expertise. And I struggled through that first table topics. The next week he gave me one on leadership. Well, they had to pull me down after 3 minutes because I could have talked about that for a long time. But it gives you that confidence. And it's really, really important with the confidence. The other thing that, you know, we talk about the showing enthusiasm and composure. My composure story is that David and I were doing a conference. It was one of the spring conferences or something. And I was doing a workshop on growth mindset. And David was bringing the projector and he was bringing the screen. And I was doing what Lorraine Campbell always told me to bring. She said, always be ready for the unexpected. So I had a carton with an extension cord that would take me to China. I had extra bulbs, I had extra clickers, I had everything I needed for the technical part. David was bringing his part. They showed me the layout of the room the night before. I was like, this is great. I'm excited. I had my playlist. This is going to be great. I'm going to be one of those people that greets everybody at the door and shakes hands, and we're going to have music, and it's going to be really energetic. I get into the room the next morning. The room is set up according to the piece of paper, but it's backwards. And we can't project on the wall that we have to project on. So instead of my fancy playlist and greeting everybody, David and I became furniture movers, swinging the whole room around in order to make it the right layout. And then had to get up and be very composed when it was time to start and say, well, good morning, how is everybody? And I think my other composure issue was I was competing for the first time in the inspirational speech contest down in the Florida Department of Transportation. And it was an inspirational speech. Love is in the air. It was about my mom and dad being married 50 years. And I started the speech with love is in the air. And with that, the lawnmower guy shows up at the window next to the stage. The thing is blasting, the weed eater's going, and everybody's like this, right? And I cannot stop my speech because they already started the timing. So I had to go into, and so are the lawnmower guys. And with that, everybody kind of relaxed. But you taught you how to immediately pivot, right? So it helps you with the composure. It helps you with all aspects of your leadership and your communication. And when you're communicating effectively, it makes a difference. I have a granddaughter. I think she's a great communicator. Every time she goes for a job, she's nervous on a job interview. I'm like, honey, you got this. Because the minute you open your mouth and you are using clear, concise language and you can have that conversation, there's no way that they're going to not hire you, even though you're also 5'10", skinny and drop dead gorgeous, but they're going to hire you. And she has gotten every job she has ever interviewed for because she can communicate. How many of you spend time every month getting your nails done? Nails, hair cut. Go out and buy some clothes. Wash your car. Go work out in the gym. Yeah, so pretty much everybody does all this stuff because you want to look good on the outside. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter how you look on the outside, because when you open your mouth, if what comes out doesn't match, it doesn't make a difference. And so Toastmasters is the investment you make, the best investment you make for the least amount of money to work on the inside and become a great speaker, a great communicator. And in that, you will have better success in your career, in your life, and in everything you do. And my husband often turns around, he goes, you know, I thought you were pretty good at what you did when you were at Amex. He goes, but that Toastmaster thing, he goes like, that just blows me away how you've changed because of it. And so with that is the essential value of public speaking. It's not about giving the keynote speech. It's not about getting up and doing presentations all day long. It's the ability to actually communicate and sell yourself, your product, influence your people, communicate to them, and get everybody on the same page and move forward. And I hope that this added some value to your day this morning. And I thank you for the invitation. But before we stop, are there any questions? Any questions? Anything I didn't cover that anybody has a question online? Any questions? You awake out there?
We can put it on gallery view so you can see people. Maybe so you should turn on your camera.
Where are all the people at?
Yeah.
I only see other names.
They're all in their daytime pajamas hiding. Yes.
My question is, how different should your communication be if you are speaking to a room of leaders of people, as opposed to if you're speaking to regular frontline folks?
Yeah, I think that the communication, the simpler and the more concise you keep it, I don't think you have to start using bigger words or anything because you're communicating at a higher level. Don't assume that they understand what you're talking about. I always think about people in the IT space, you know, they go in and they talk IT language and it's great. They know what they're talking about. The business has no clue what they just said. And so you may want to, you know, bring it up a little bit. And then with your front line, it might be more directed, more prescriptive. But I think you just always want to keep your communication simple. Any other questions from the audience in person or online?
Good morning. I got a question. My name is Rena. I'm curious on the topic itself. I work in the area of accounting. I'm dealing with a lot of production maintenance personnel. Accounting is not all exciting to share the passion with those group members. So how do you bring that kind of topics and processes and procedures in a more engaging setting so they can receive it?
That's a really, really good question. I have other accountants that like, this is like the driest thing in the world. I think that, you know, in accounting, you have deliverables, right? And I think the enthusiasm is bringing the recognition into the picture and acknowledging that we made the deadline, we completed the task, and bringing some energy to that, or even just coming in and saying, listen, we have a big day ahead of us, but I think that, you know, we can do it. So it's that encouraging conversation. I always think back to the day in American Express, I was running the Platinum Telephone Service Unit. And these guys were just nailing it. It was like 3 days of total intense, no time off the phone. We were busy as anything. And I just called out, and I couldn't talk to them because they're on the phone. So I was never able to have that one-on-one conversation. And I just went down and I called the cafeteria. I said, I need trays with like 8 dozen cookies. I need 10 dozen sodas, 5 dozen ice cream cones or ice cream pops. And when they brought it up, we just went desk to desk. And all I said is, thanks for hanging in there. So accounting, it is a little bit when you're in one of those roles where it's very cut and dry. But that doesn't mean you can't be encouraging and excited about, we made the deadline, we closed the books, we finished the task.
Thank you.
But you have to bring some energy into that.
Yes.
Other questions?
My question was, how do you get the people you're speaking with, especially in an online meeting platform, to engage more with you? Sometimes you feel like you're asking people to speak up,
Yep.
but no one wants to take the lead or speak first.
What I always do in my workshops is I say, now, today, everybody's going to speak, everybody's going to participate. So you can sit there as long as you want and think you're going to get out of it, but you're not. And I'm going to call on you, and it's going to become routine. And I've had groups that I've taken through our journey. We're into the 10th session out of 12, and I'm like, okay, guys, you should know better. You know I'm going to call on you, so why aren't you jumping in there? If they're introverts especially, they're going to wait to be called on. So just set the expectation up front. Everybody's speaking today, so don't be surprised when I call on you. Yep. And with that, I think I'll turn it back so that you can do some table topics. And again, thank you for the invitation. Thank you.